Thank you for joining me for this yin flow today. We are on a series based on koshas, and koshas are written about in the Upanishads as the casings, sheaths, or layers of our being. That's what the literal translation is. And so basically, it talks about everything that encases the soul. And it talks about five of these layers. We are taking one per week. The first one was the Annamaya Kosha, which is the physical body, the physical structure, the most dense part. And then when we move into the second layer, it's our energy layer, our Pranamaya Kosha. It's also coming in mainly through the breath. So it's the breath body. We also talk about the third layer being the mind stuff, the Manomaya Kosha, which is basically all the mental chatter and ramblings of the mind. This could include perceptions, thoughts, imagination, projections, fantasies, daydreams, memory recall, even our emotions and our feelings. And then the more subtle layer than that, I'm not going to try to say the Sanskrit term because I never can get it right, but it basically means the layer of discernment or self-awareness, the higher state of consciousness, or the wisdom. We talk about it being our intuition, our inner knowing. And we have to be able to get the mind quiet enough to hear that inner whisper. We have to be focused enough in order to determine those impressions that are coming in from this layer of discernment. It can help us to discover what is right or wrong, good or bad, what is helpful or hurtful, what is useful or useless, what is true and what is false. So that is the layer we're concerned with today. And I think this is a perfect practice for dropping into this layer, because with yin, we're trying to go towards our edge. And you don't always have to be at 100% of your edge, since we're going to be steeping in the poses. So you may want to pull back to about 75, 85% of your edge, since we're going to maintain these longer held positions. And then while we're in these positions, and as the sensation begins to wax and build up, that's when we have to determine through this layer of discernment, should I stay in it? Should I pull back? Can I go deeper? Should I do less? Is this good for me? Is my body benefiting? Or is this going to potentially harm me? So that's an important layer that we discover while we're doing the physical practice, but it's also a really important layer to be connected with when we leave the practice, so that we can make better decisions and be able to respond in a better way in life. So absolutely have a blanket and a bolster, and I'm going to meet you on the mat. So with this Dharma talk in mind, we're going to go ahead and start to calm the mind pretty quickly, which happens in forward folds. And I thought we could start with tadpole, which is similar to child's. The big toes come together, you're back on your heels. There's a separation between your knees, and you're going to sprawl out, sending the arms in front of you, and then lowering down to the brow. And so tadpole is not only a forward fold, which is naturally calming to the nervous system, but we're also spilling down to the brow, which is a marma point to help to calm the mind. So first, notice on your physical layer, feeling the texture of the mat beneath your hands and feet. Feel your forearms and shins touching down, but maybe feeling a little bit more weighted in your knees and brow.
Scanning through the body to notice how it feels today. And then starting to move into the second layer, your breath body.
You want to become the driver of your breath, and we're trying to develop a smooth, rhythmic breath. I don't know if you guys ever remember the singer Sade, but Sade had a song called Smooth Operator. And even though she's not talking about this per se, think about being the smooth operator of your personal breath. The breath that allows you to go within, and the breath that's going to affect all of these layers.
Once you build up that connection to your breath, you'll be gaining access more to this layer that we're speaking of today. Unless your mind is rambling on. But if you're truly being consistent with your breath, if you're being the smooth operator of your breath, the mind will begin to slow down. And it's in those moments where it's calm and focused, where we can be in the question of things. You'll also start to notice if any part of the body becomes pain or uncomfortable, if you reside here. Sometimes people think the feet are going to sleep, but it's actually energy moving through the feet. Some people find that it's a little much for the knees because there's a lot of flexion here. And this is what we're assessing. Should I stay or should I go?
And then inhale, slowly lift the head up. When you lift the head up, we're going to come forward onto the forearms and shift the hips away from the heels. The feet, this is why we needed a blanket wider than that. You're going to splay your thighs wide, let them slide, and then your feet are going to turn out. And this is a variation of frog pose. This is not an easy pose by any means. There is a way, if it's just too much for you today, there is a way to do this where you're kind of sitting back on a bolster. That may help to alleviate the sensation if it's just too much. So be aware of that. If you shift forward, it will be less. If you shift back, it's going to give you more. So that's another thing to be aware of in this pose, especially when you're trying to be calm and patient as this sensation develops, as tension unravels. I don't know if I can hold it much longer, you guys. This is a big one. I think I'm ready to exit. Let's all exit. Let's start to shift our body weight forward. Bring the big toes towards each other. Slide your hands back in just long enough to close the knees more together. And then we're going to come down onto our belly. Now, earlier today, I was doing the same sequence, and there was a yoga teacher in the room, and she said, "This is hard." I promise I did not intend to make it hard. But we're going to sail the left leg off to the left side. And what we're trying to do is make an L shape or kind of a 90-degree angle through those limbs. It may not be perfect. We're going to take the left arm ahead of us and the right arm to the right side of us, creating that same L-shaped type formation through those limbs. Turning to rest on one cheek for a prone 4-point star. So we're extending the limbs to get into shape, but then we're softening into the shape. So see if you can scan through the body and mindfully let go of any muscular engagement. Going from doing into a state of being. On your next in-breath, bend your left knee. Slide your forearms in. Stack onto Sphinx arms. If that guitar is coming through Zoom, that's what I was talking about in the email I sent. Rob is recording downstairs today. It's not a full band, but he's having to record, so it may be filtering through. Now, if you're starting to feel like there's too much compression in your low back with this, or maybe it's feeling like it's just too much for your hip, you can slide the left knee down. You can walk the elbows forward and spill down into prayer hands. I'm just going to hold a few more breaths. We're going to bring the left leg back. Whew. Now we're going to take the L shape with the right leg to the right side. The right arm's going to reach out in front of us. The left arm to the left side and turn to one cheek. A prone variation of 4-point star. At first, extending the limbs, being active in the approach, but then we become more passive, surrendering, relaxing into the shape. Let's go ahead and bend the right knee. We're still flipped to the inside of the foot. Arms will stack underneath you to prop up your heart. And remember, if it's too much for the hips, slide the knee further back. And if it's too much for your low back, you can walk the arms forward and sink into prayer hands. You're noticing resistance. You're noticing when you receive permission. Could be resistance just because you're tightly woven in that area, but there's also signs where the resistance comes in because it's just going to be harmful for you. And this is where that layer of discernment comes into play. What is right for me in the now moment? At any point in time, you can give yourself more or less. When you're ready, extend your right leg back behind you. Come down to the brow. Let your hands be initially stacked underneath your shoulders, but instead of zipping the legs together, slide the feet wide apart. And then as you slowly lift the head up, you're going to slide your hands forward and out. And you're going to prop up to what we call seal. If seal is too much, just do regular Sphinx. Similar to what we were doing before, except without the opening in the hip. So I mentioned a lot, and I'll mention it again. Science says the true intuitive center is the heart. Even though we gain the feeling in our gut and we get the message in our mind. So it's important to center in your heart. And this practice will help you to do that. Let's just hold 3 more breaths. Start to buckle the arms to lower towards your chest. Hands up underneath the shoulders, feet more together. Push up, crawl the knees forward to align under the hips. Drop the tailbone, hollow out the belly, hollow out the chest. Arc up into cat stretch pose. On your next in-breath, you can neutralize the spine. We are going to be on the knees again. However, it's not going to be as intense as that frog. So I'm going to take the blanket away. We're going to enter into downward facing dog from there. Pressing into the hands and the feet. Stretching out through the limbs and bowing the head. Even though this is a more active pose, it is sedating and calming for the mind. So let the positioning and allow your diaphragmatic breathing to take you there. We're going to walk the feet forward to the top of the mat. Softening the knees and bowing into dangling pose. Let your head go. Let your arms go. And maybe emphasize a longer, slower out breath. Feel as though you've got a magnet being drawn and attracted towards another, located at your knees or shins. Even though the knees are bent, you're giving your glutes a little pick-me-up.
Just like quivering is okay. That's energy erupting. That's muscles awakening. Strong shaking, right? Discerning that maybe this isn't okay. That could be a fair warning from the body. So pay attention. Now, on your next in breath, straighten your leg bones. Slide your hands up to the hip crease, like at the upper part of your thighs, and create a 90-degree angle with your body. And take the arms up alongside your ears. Keep pressing through the feet, and then inhale, slowly start to come up. As you come up, reach the hands even more skyward. Place the palms together, gaze up towards your wrists. From this upward worship position, bend the elbows, bring the thumbs to the upper back. Roll the arms in towards your ears, puff up through the center of your chest, and let your head lean back into your hands. And I'm going to turn sideways so that you can see I'm not tucking the tailbone. We're keeping the legs neutral, the pelvis neutral. And the eyes can be open or shut. All right, inhale, lift the arms back up to upward worship. Exhale, let the arms spray around your body. Bring the tips of the fingers together at the small of the back, and then begin to wiggle them upstream. Now, if you roll the shoulders back, lean the arms back, you might be able to connect your thumb or a portion of your wrist. Don't worry if you can't do that, because that's a lot. You can always just cross your arms and keep it a little bit more simplistic. But you're lowering the shoulders away from the ears, lifting up through the sternum, breathing into the front part of the chest. All right, on your next in breath, take the arms wide and overhead. Exhale, hands together, fold but soften your knees. You're entering back into the dangling position. Except this time, we're going to wrap the arms behind the legs. And we're going to slip and slide the arms down the calves. And closing ourselves in a little bit more. Sometimes the cleansing breaths, where we breathe out through the mouth, can lessen the intensity. They can loosen the jaw. Now take the hands down to the mat. You're going to step into your plank. You're going to shift forward and lower to chaturanga. You're going to flow through upward facing dog and return to downward facing dog. Being here in Adho Mukha Svanasana.
On the next out breath, we're going to descend the knees, untuck the toes, and we're going to sink into melting heart. So Anahatasana, the arms reach out, the head drips down. Now, the difference between this and extended child's pose, everyone today in the studio wanted to rock the hips back. But in Anahatasana, the hips stay over the knees, thighs perpendicular to the floor. We get to swoop through the back. You can rest on chin or third eye. As you surrender to gravity, notice, is it too intense for the shoulders? If you think it's too much and it may be harming, then cross one arm under your head. Modify it. That's the layer of discernment, stepping in for your own protection. If you've been doing just one side, switch to the other. From Anahatasana, slide your hands back. We're going to move into a twist, thread the needle. Now we're going to flip the left palm open, thread the arm through. And the active way is to push into the right hand and to roll and push out into your back ribs. But the true yin way is actually sliding the left arm back a bit, collapsing the right arm down, and face planting down on that left cheek and temple. You may notice in the active formation, when you're pushing away from the hand, your face slightly tilts up towards the ceiling. Here, it's not doing that. It's not even so much about the twist as it is about resting on the left arm. Activating and opening these 3 meridians that travel here: the large intestine meridian, the small intestine meridian, and the triple heater. Hanging out here a few more breaths. And slide your right hand closer to the face. Build yourself back to table. And we'll take that to the other side. Right hand flips and threads beneath. And then for yin, you can be active if you prefer, but yin, we walk or slide the right arm back towards the knees. Instead of pushing away from the left hand, we just let it flop. And we also face plant down on the right cheek and temple. And then all is asked that you just be here now. Perhaps observing and noticing which layer you want to land in. All right, let's move on. Left hand slides closer. Push down to that palm to return to a tabletop position. If you want a vinyasa, this is your opportunity. If you want to just take down dog, you can pause there. So otherwise, plank to chaturanga, to up dog, to downward facing dog. And from Adho Mukha Svanasana, we're going to move into swan, another name for pigeon. So if you lift your left leg, swing it through, allow the shin to come down behind your hands. Excuse me. You know, you can also do deer pose or flip on your back and do eye of the needle pose. Either one of those is a great alternative for this one. And just pour down when you're ready. Any of these poses are good for developing that longer, sweeter out breath to help you to release.
So from swan pose, if you slowly start to lift up, if you are hanging out halfway already, you may want to do this variation of the twist or this variation of the twist. If you are, in fact, on your back, you're just going to roll your knees to one side. But you could try this option if you're in swan. Left arm forward, right arm under, left arm behind the back. This is the one that was difficult for me earlier today. Whichever version you take, close and rest your eyes. And you can notice the layers you're surfing in and out of. Three more breaths. And this is, again, one of those poses where some people will relay they feel like their feet are going to sleep, but there's a lot of meridians that travel there, begin or end here. So take your left hand down, lift your way up, take down dog. Now you can see, excuse me, you guys, I'm dehydrated. You can see when you get to downward facing dog, it's more of a flush, more of a bloodletting that's occurring. It's not asleep at all. Inhale, lift the right leg up. Exhale, bring that knee through. Sliding the left leg back, unless, of course, you want deer or flip to your back. Right foot over the left knee. Otherwise, drop in. Continue to hold that pose. My layer of discernment is saying get water. I'll be right back. We all have a higher state of wisdom that wants to guide us. But we first have to calm the mind and hear those little whispers.
And if you get into that quiet and focused space, then maybe even consider asking a question and then waiting for an answer.
So years ago, when I was leaving the studio, I was in a really good space because I had just taken a couple yoga classes. And I was on my way home and I was not really in my head. I was just driving, kind of in a zone. But then a question popped up into my head like, why am I not finding someone to be in a relationship with? And the answer came to me immediately that I was married to the studio and all that came with it. And it was this aha kind of light bulb moment of now being aware that literally all my energy and focus went towards the studio and the community. And then I purposely started to pull back a little bit from doing so much so that I could make space in my life for a relationship. So if you're ever on a long road trip, just driving and being focused on the drive can get you into a little bit of a meditative state, just like yoga can. And it is a good time in the car when you're in that place to pose and ask some questions and just see what comes.
It may present to you an answer from a different angle you weren't aware of before. And on your next in breath, we're going to lift up. And again, you can take another variation of the twist. If you're on your back, just roll the knees to the other side. But if you're joining me from swan, right arm forward, left arm thread under, then the right arm can sweep behind the back and potentially even catch that foot below. A great stretch for the piriformis as well. And we're going to use downward facing dog for our final immersion today. Stay here for just a few more breaths. So if you're on your back and you rolled into a twist, you can certainly roll to your back and take bridge pose instead. If you don't want to turn over and do downward facing dog with the rest of us. So let's go ahead and pick one of those inversions, either bridge or downward facing dog. And we're going to hold for 5 full breaths. And at the end of your 5, you can come down to the floor. Now I had you grab that bolster for that frog pose because that can be a lot. If you want to restore, you can use that prop. But if you want to stay true to yin, you can separate the feet, extend the arms overhead, and do the yin form of quartz. So I'll let you choose. If you're choosing to join me in this yin position, notice how it really opens the front of the body. Feel the points that are touching the earth. Take a few deep sips of breath. And then eventually letting the breath go. Watching the thoughts pass by like clouds. Sifting through these layers to arrive at the fourth, the place where you're heightened in self-awareness, much higher in your state of consciousness, tapped into your intuitive voice, to the layer that's called discernment or higher wisdom. See if you can be here. Take 3 more breaths. On the third round, hug your knees in. Roll to one side. Come up and sit. Joining your hands to prayer position at your heart. Humbly bowing the head. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We all walk away from this practice being free and at peace from anything out of our control, anything imposed upon us by another, or any internal stressors of our own. May we walk away feeling more at home and at peace in our bodies, hearts, and minds. Namaste.